Brothers and sisters in the Dharma, let us pay our respects to Tan Ajahn by bowing 3 times following the sound of the bell. Good afternoon and good evening, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the continuation of the 2021 Wesak program organized by the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia. This afternoon, we have the privilege of inviting Tan Ajahn Kalyano to give us a Dhamma talk. The topic of today's talk is the Buddha's path to awakening. Before we begin, allow me to share a brief of Tan Ajahn Kalyano. Tan Ajahn is the abbot and resident teacher of the Buddha Bodhivana Monastery located at East Warburton, Victoria, Australia. Tan Ajahn was born in the UK and became interested in Buddhism at high school. He began practicing meditation on a regular basis during his time at the university, and this led to his decision to travel to Thailand in 1983 to seek out a meditation teacher. Tan Ajahn entered the Bhikkhu Sangha at Pak Nong Papong in 1985, where he regularly spent long periods of time there helping to nurse Venerable Ajahn Chah through his extended period of illness. Tan Ajahn translated Dharma teachings from Venerable Ajahn Chah and other forest Ajahns, and this work continued when he began training under Tan Ajahn Anan in 1991. Tan Ajahn Kalyano continues to practice and teach at the monastery and is also regularly invited to offer teachings about the Buddhist path, both in Australia and overseas. Today, we are indeed fortunate that Tan Ajahn is able to share the Dharma with us. We will now start with the opening salutation to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, followed by formally requesting Tan Ajahn to lead us to determine the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Please bow each time you hear the bell. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Mayam Bante Tisaranena Saha Panca Silani Yachama. Dutiyampi Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panca Silani Yachama. Tatiyampi Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panca Silani Yachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisaranakamanang nititang.
Amabante.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adhinatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu michachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu michachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surame raya maja pamatatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sukatiyanti silena bhogasampada silena nibbutiyanti tasma silang visotaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Tan Ajahn, for leading us in the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Now I would like to formally request for the Dhamma talk. Brahma Chaloka Dipati Sahampati Katan Jaliana Divaram Ayatata Santi Dasata Paraja Kajatika Dese Tudamang Anukam Pimang Pajang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Blessings and greetings to you all. As you're aware, we are participating in the WASAC program for the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia this year. And it's nice to see you have a full program with many teachers giving talks on different aspects of Buddhism from the different traditions. So it's a good opportunity for us all to recollect the Buddha, both as a person, a historical figure, but also in terms of the qualities of the Buddha, what the Buddha symbolizes, and particularly the truth that the Buddha was pointing to through his own life, practice, and teachings. So hopefully for all of you, it's a very happy occasion. And one of the words we use to describe the Buddha is sukhato. We say one who went well, or you could say a modern way of saying it might be the happy one. And it's something that we should bring to mind frequently, I think, through our practice of the Buddhist path. The Buddha was happy, content, at peace, He was a living example of what he taught. And so just remembering the Buddha as the happy one, the peaceful one, the more you do that, the more you recollect and remember the Buddha through your life, it can be a very simple, direct way to calm your mind and bring up a sense of happiness in different situations. Whether you're stressed or you're already happy and peaceful, doesn't matter. But that's one of the, the ways we can remember the Buddha as somebody who is truly happy. In life, we talk about many kinds of happiness, the happiness of getting what we want, having nice things, being successful, liked by people, getting all kinds of pleasurable experiences. But the kind of happiness the Buddha was experiencing was the happiness of a peaceful, pure mind. But he was happy, at ease in body and mind. So we're celebrating Wesak this year through the practice, listening to Dhamma, keeping precepts, meditating, which I think is a way that the Buddha would have commended and supported if he was still alive. And it's a time we can recollect these qualities of the Buddha. Just chanting the verses of recollection of the Buddha. Iti piso bhagawa arahang samma, that verse I think you'll all know. At any time is a very simple way to bring your mind to recollect the Buddha, our teacher. And sometimes as part of our meditation practice, we can also meditate on these qualities, these themes, as a way to both bring up mindfulness, clarity, faith, and understanding of who the Buddha was and why we call ourselves Buddhist, and why we want to follow his teachings. Perhaps the word that you might have heard of most of all from those different qualities of the Buddha from that chant that Buddhists will chant is the word Buddho. Certainly the word I've heard most of and probably recollected mostly in my practice as a monk over the years. Buddho means awake, and we call the Buddha the awakened one. Why do we call the Buddha the awakened one, or what's he awakened from? Isn't he awake already? Aren't we awake already? Well, on the conventional sense, if you'll say you're here listening to this talk, you could say you're awake, unless you're falling asleep already. But we are awake only partially. We're not yet awakened to the truth. And what does the Buddha stand for? It's a person who awakened his own mind to the truth through his own efforts, pursuing the truth, wanting to understand the way things are and free himself from suffering and stress through that understanding. And so the way he described that experience of enlightenment that occurred on that full moon day in May, many thousands of years ago, this state is a state of awakening to the truth, waking up from what is not the truth, delusion, or sometimes referred to as a dream. So we are awake at this moment, but because we're still not enlightened, we're still subject to this dream state, the state where our imagination, our moods and thoughts and reactions to the world take over the mind, and we're not fully aware or fully awake. And maybe that's the difference between us and a Buddha or any other enlightened being, an arahant, which is another one of those descriptions of the Buddha. Who was the Buddha? He was an arahant. We say arahang vijacharana sampanno and so on. Arahang means arahant, means enlightened one. Anyone who practices what the Buddha taught and wakens up to the truth will experience this same experience of nibbana, of liberation, the mind free from greed, anger, delusion. Man, woman, whoever, if they follow this path to completion, they can attain this same experience of arahant, full awakening, but awakening because all the causes of the dream state have gone. You know, the mind that's fully awakened to the truth is no longer caught into its own delusions and attachments and wrong views and wrong thinking about life, about the world. So the Buddha we call the Buddha, the awakened one. And so my teachers, Ajahn Chah and his colleagues, contemporaries in the Thai forest tradition, they took this word, Buddha, as a meditation word to be cultivated, developed, to symbolize both the Buddha and then the awakened knowledge of the Buddha. So it's a word that has deep meaning for many, many Buddhists, who are particularly those who have practiced meditation over the years, and some of them have become enlightened or gained the same awakened knowledge of the Buddha using this meditation word as a way to anchor their mind in mindfulness, to wake up to the way things are. So when we use a meditation word such as Buddha, reciting Buddha over and over again, whether sitting or walking or even in other activities, on the one hand, we're linking ourselves to the Buddha as a teacher, as a person, but more deeply, we're linking ourselves to the awakened knowledge, the same kind of awakened knowledge that the Buddha developed. You might call that the Dhamma. And you're probably aware of that famous teaching of the Buddha taught a monk who was getting infatuated with the way the Buddha looked. You know, just his physical form, the gracefulness of his appearance and his movements and the way he spoke and the way he did things was very attractive to many people because he was pure and free from suffering. But the Buddha encouraged people not to attach to him as a person, you know, to that beauty and that outward appearance. He'd say, one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. You know, the real Buddha is the qualities that we're developing, this path of practice that he gave us, what we call the Eightfold Noble Path. That's where you really find the Buddha. So this practice of recollection or reciting the word Buddha, recollecting the Buddha, to develop mindfulness, clear comprehension, and wisdom. This is where we find the real Buddha or the inner Buddha. And this is something that my teachers, Ajahn Chah and the forest tradition in Thailand, have emphasized over and over again, and how to actually put this Buddhist path into practice in your life, whether you're in the forest or in the city, whether you're in the monastery or a layperson. Everyone can use this method as a way to awaken themselves to the truth, to bring their mind out of this sort of tendency to always be dreaming, lost in daydreams, or literally falling asleep. As we all know, when we practice meditation, sleepiness is a big obstacle. But when we're not fighting with sleepiness, we're also dealing with just the mind that just is endlessly wandering, proliferating about different things, some pleasant, some unpleasant, endlessly thinking, endlessly reacting with the different emotions to our experience, but not fully awake because we're caught up into that. So I've had it kind of drilled into me since I was first ordained, is that the key to the Buddhist path of awakening, the quality that is, you might say, foremost or utmost that we must develop at all times, is the quality of mindfulness, sati. And using the word Buddha, although there are many other ways to develop mindfulness as well, but using the word Buddha as central to that, the mind that is awake is the mind of Buddha, the mind that knows, the mind that's in the present moment. So for myself, I've learned to become friends with the word Buddha, to see it as a very useful anchor and a thing to return to over the years. You know, like a good friend who you develop a good relationship over the years, I've developed a good relationship with the word Buddha. And I think many, many Buddhists have. They may not yet be fully enlightened or fully awakened, but it's a method that they have. It's something they can turn to pretty much at any time. Often practiced with the practice of mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati, which we also know that the Buddha practiced on the night of his enlightenment and practiced regularly in his life. The practice of reciting Buddha in line with the breath is something you can do at any time. It's always there, it's always an option. So coming to reflect on the life of the Buddha at this time, Wesak or Visakha, it brings us to this very direct message the Buddha gave us. He said, well, as human beings, we've been born into the world and we all want happiness. We want to be safe, secure, peaceful, but we have to develop that and cultivate that through our own efforts. And so the word Buddha symbolizes that. It's the effort to cultivate awareness and knowledge. And this is direct knowledge of the way things are. It's supported by what you might call book knowledge and external sources of knowledge, talks and things from other people. But really it's something, a quality you have to internalize and cultivate internally through developing the path of practice, sila, samadhi, panya, and developing ourselves with this awakened knowledge, and particularly finding methods to develop mindfulness on a regular basis. That teacher I mentioned just now, or the forest tradition, we have Ajahn Chah was my teacher, but there are many, many teachers in the Thai forest tradition who have practiced this. The grandfather of the Thai forest tradition was Ajahn Mun, and this was the meditation technique he used, the word Buddha, learning to recite this regularly in the sitting posture, the standing posture, the walking posture, and even lying down, reciting Buddha to awaken himself. And some of his close disciples have mentioned that he became enlightened, became an arahant, so he fulfilled this path of awakening through his own practice. And he had the ability to recollect his past lives, one of those unusual special knowledges that meditators can develop when they really mature their practice and develop states of samadhi. And he could recollect back to the time of Gautama the Buddha that we refer to as our Buddha, and that he was one of the Kuru people. You possibly have read the Satipatthana Sutta and the Buddha's teachings on the practice of mindfulness, one of the most practical suttas or teachings the Buddha gave on the practice of developing mindfulness. And he says he was one of the Guru people, one of the people who heard that teaching, which really boosted his practice, and he could remember subsequent lives practicing mindfulness in different lives until his final life as a monk called Ajahn Mun. He even said he was so inspired by hearing the Dhamma from the Buddha that he actually made a wish, a resolve to become a Buddha. And he followed that resolve for many, many lifetimes, planning, aiming to become a Buddha in a future lifetime. But he said, he told some of his close disciples that he finally abandoned that resolve because he could see it would take so long to become a Buddha, so many lifetimes of suffering. He actually abandoned it and accepted to become what we call a Sāvaka Buddha, an enlightened disciple of a Buddha. And we believe he became an arahant, an enlightened disciple of the Buddha in his life. But using this word Buddha as his meditation word, and he really stuck to it, and he said he found it so inspiring because it always brought him back to this recollecting the Buddha, both who the Buddha was and then the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. It's like a key or a link to what he was aiming for in his practice and what inspired him. So it's always a word that brought up faith. As we know, having faith inspiration in the Buddha and his path of practice is essential. So these occasions like this, when we come together to practice, listen to the Dhamma, practice at the time of Wesak is one of those occasions where we tend to come back to our original faith in the Buddha and his teachings, maybe to reinforce it, deepen it, because it's that faith and that confidence that gives us energy to practice. Some people find the meditation word Buddho, even though it has a good meaning and they appreciate that, they find it difficult to use it as a meditation object. It doesn't bring up faith. So sometimes in conjunction with the practice of Buddho as a meditation object, we can also recollect the life of the Buddha and the life of teachers such as Ajahn Mun or Ajahn Chah, or another teacher who used the word meditation word Buddho is Ajahn Mahabua. And you may be aware this is the 15th of May today. This is the anniversary of his own enlightenment experience, which you may be able to read about in his teachings. And he personally told me and other monks over the years about how he practiced to enlightenment and using the word Buddho as what centered his mind and kept him focusing on developing mindfulness over and over again. And it was the 15th of May, I think in 1950. So this was about 1 year after his teacher, Ajahn Mun, passed away. He said the passing away of his teacher was a great impetus for him to push on with his practice. His teacher had gone now, so he was both saddened, but also he gained this sense of urgency. Oh, my teacher has gone, I should really push on to understand the very things that my teacher was encouraging me to understand and practice. So this day, the 15th of May, for many of his students, is a day just to remember the fact that the Buddha was enlightened. He had enlightened students such as Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun had enlightened students such as Ajahn Mahabua. This path of practice or path of awakening is true. And we can use that as a way to inspire ourselves when we recollect the good practice of the Sangha, the teachers, the Buddha. This is where we can get some faith, some confidence, and the mind brightens, doesn't it? When you recollect these qualities that these teachers have practiced or that the Buddha himself had, what's the effect on your mind is you're brightened, it brightens. And that brightening can dispel darkness, just in the same way as when you're in a room that's dark, you turn a light on, the darkness is dispelled by the light. The light here, though, is the light of internal light of your own mind that is becoming wholesome, and skillful qualities arise when you recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and those qualities. So I would recommend it as a regular practice, whatever other practices you do in Buddhism, whether it's dana and helping people and putting compassion into action, keeping the precepts, contemplating the teachings, listening to the teachings, a way to really make all those practices effective is to bring the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha into your heart and recollect them frequently, often. All these practices of recollection are to be done again and again, frequently. So recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha frequently, even at the very beginning of every meditation session you do, if you're doing a meditation retreat or you're just at home. This is why many people chant, or they learn to bow to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, they pause, they learn to reflect on Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, because it brings up very wholesome, nourishing qualities. Your mind brightens, becomes illuminated when you recollect these qualities. So many people, like when Ajahn Mun taught us to practice walking meditation, he said, stop, pause at the beginning of your walking path, put your hands in Anjali, think of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, show your respect. Already that clears the mind a little bit from the normal stresses and distractions and moods and emotions that may be coming up from your day. If you do a period of walking meditation, you think of Buddha Dhamma Sangha at the beginning. That helps put you in the right frame of mind. Or if you're doing a period of sitting meditation, recollect the Buddha Dhamma Sangha at the very beginning. It always brings you back to what you're doing, sets your goal, sets your path to awakening. And then you step out, as it were, if you're walking, or you start to practice mindfulness of breathing or recitation of the word Buddha. At least it's giving you that beginning point, putting you in the right direction. And you'll find as you practice the Dhamma, particularly developing the path of awakening, developing the quality of mindfulness and wisdom, that, you know, it's almost like a game. You know, you set your mind, I'm going to practice developing mindfulness, reciting Buddha, recollecting the Buddha, following the breath, whatever the technique is you're using. You set your goal and off you go, but very quickly you get distracted. Maybe after just 30 seconds, you've already forgotten the Buddha, you've forgotten Buddha, and your mind is gone. And that's just teaching you something, isn't it? It's teaching you this is the kind of dream state the imagination takes over that the Buddha was pointing to, that we have to learn to wake up from. That doesn't happen to the Buddha, to enlightened teachers. They've learned to work through that, work through the delusions and attachments of the mind. Just with the same set of skills and qualities that we are developing, with the same body and mind, human beings just like us, but they had the patience, the faith, that made that effort to actually push through all the imaginations and dreams of the mind that constantly distract us. They didn't give in all the time. They didn't just indulge them, follow them. They learned to use Buddha or the breath or any other meditation object to bring up that mindfulness and that clarity and clear comprehension that helps to push aside all the imaginations of the mind, which is what we get caught into and which what brings us stress. So you're probably all familiar with that teaching of the Buddha, that, you know, the one who becomes heedful, becomes mindful, say they start to recite the word Buddha and set aside other concerns in the mind. That experience is like the moon coming out from behind the clouds part, and you can experience the brightness, the radiance of a full moon, say. So it's something, again, on Wesak, you know, the full moon in May, where you can just remind yourself of that teacher. If you're outdoors at nighttime on the 26th of May this year, the full moon, you can stand there, watch the moon, and even if you're in a cloudy place, maybe there'll be moments when you just glimpse the moon as the clouds part, and you get that very clear teaching that the Buddha gave, that, you know, when the mind is with Buddha, the awakened awareness, what's it like? Well, the Buddha said it's like radiant, like the moon. It's brighter, and brighter implies more peaceful, more happy, more calm. You might assume the mind of a Buddha is like that all the time. It's like a bright, radiant moon all the time, with no blemishes, no asavas, what we call. The knowledge of an enlightened person, a Buddha or an Arahant, is a knowledge of the ending of the asavas, asava kaya yana. So no more greed, anger, delusion, no more becoming, no more ignorance. That's our starting point in the practice. Of course, we're all human beings, and we're born into this world with plenty of greed, anger, delusion, ignorance. We have to accept that. Our mind is not yet the mind of the full moon. We may occasionally glimpse that as we start practicing, but we're also working through a lot of cloudy weather. Where I live in Australia, in the mountains, we get lots of cloudy days. So, you know, they're just reminding us, I have a lot of clouds still in my mind to deal with, to work through. But the Buddha has given us the path, And that's our good fortune, you might say. And this in itself is a reflection at Wesak, to reflect on how lucky we are, how fortunate we are to have the Buddha and his path, the teachings that we can practice. We still have many good teachers around in the world. The Tripitaka is here, the teachings in texts are here, the places of practice are still here. The teachings are still good. What's left is ourselves, our own efforts. How much effort are we going to put into this? And we have to remember, what was the Buddha teaching? He was teaching the way out of suffering by developing this quality of awakened awareness, the mind of Buddha, the awakened mind. He was teaching us a way to free ourselves from the causes of suffering, to bring the moon out from behind the clouds. And we have that available to us. So I don't know if you're the same as me, but ever since I started practicing Buddhism, that always brought back the question, so how committed am I to do this? So for me, that brought me into the robes to become a Buddhist monk. And I thought, well, there's nothing else I really want to do other than train, both out of respect, gratitude for the Buddha, both out of seeing it as the real way to free a mind, a human mind, from suffering. And then also because I had the opportunity, because the teaching is still here, the path of practice here, and I was fortunate to meet a good teacher like Ajahn Chah. So for me, the question has always been, well, how much am I going to commit to this? And that may be a question you could ask regularly, especially at this time, Wesak. Ask yourself, how much time, effort do I put into my practice as a Buddhist? How much energy, commitment do I give to it? How valuable, how important is the Buddha's path to me in my life? Because what we know is that the opposite is often what happens. Is we're overwhelmed by things that are nothing to do with the Buddha and his teachings. We're overwhelmed by the suffering of life, the distractions of life, the pleasures, the pains of life are often center stage in our experience as human beings. So again, the mind of Buddha is that mind that you're bringing your mind back to the present moment and applying it to the Dhamma, to the path of practice. And that can be on any level. So, it's not that Buddha is simply a meditation object for monks in the forest, although it can be. It can also just be that awakened awareness as you get up in the morning and go about your business, whether you're going to work, you're dealing with your family, you're doing your thing. Where is your mind from moment to moment through your day? What is happening? What is going on? So it's a technique of learning. Awakening also means learning from experience, to come to the truth and see the truth through our experience, waking up to the truth. And that's something you can keep returning to by applying the Dhamma in your daily life, bringing your mind back to the present moment as you're doing many other things. And it's not separate. The mind of Buddha is not something separate from who you are, where you are. You may be leading a busy life, working, or have family commitments, or you may be living on your own. You may be a monk or a nun in a monastery. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is to see that this quality of awakened awareness, mindfulness, clear comprehension, wisdom based on investigating the truth. This is the heart of the mind of Buddha. And we have to apply it anywhere. That monk, Ajahn Mahabua, who we're celebrating his Enlightenment Day today, I had the good fortune to meet him, hear his Dhamma and practice with him many times. And often his teachings were very, very repetitive. Living with him, he would say things like, keep reciting Buddha, keep bringing your mind back to the present moment, whatever you're doing. Don't let your mind get distracted. Don't fall asleep. Keep following the path of practice. Keep the sila, the precepts. Keep developing mindfulness. Keep investigating the Dhamma. He would say this over and over again, and he would say something as simple as, if your mind is with Buddha, then you're safe. It means greed, anger, delusion, the mental defilements, the confusions, the causes of suffering cannot enter your mind at that moment. So even if you only have one moment of Buddha, one drop of Buddha, at that moment your mind is going to be brighter, more wholesome than at a moment when you have no Buddha, no awareness. So it's one of his constant teachings. He said, keep coming back to Buddha, keep developing this word Buddha, or this awareness based on Buddha over and over again, and then you're on the right path. And you can do that whether you're standing, sitting, walking, lying down. It's a practice of mindfulness in every posture and in every activity. Of course, in some occasions in life, we can't simply recite Buddha over and over again. As you're talking to someone or maybe involved in some complicated activity, you may not be able to recite Buddha all the time at that time. But it's a way we certainly can come back to establishing mindfulness through our day by coming back to the recitation of Buddha from time to time. And it also makes us familiar with watching our mind. And so if you are doing a more complex activity, such as talking or some job of work, typing or working with a computer, or you're engaging with other people in different ways, even though you may not be reciting Buddha, but you can still be developing that same awareness of body, speech, and mind as you're involved with these different activities. And this is the way I believe the Buddha taught, especially when he taught the guru people, the four foundations of mindfulness. He was encouraging us to be aware of body and mind moment to moment through our day. And this is where we come to see the real Buddha. There's the historical Buddha that we now remember, and we make Buddha images, statues, pictures, which perhaps help to bring up faith and remind us of who the Buddha was. But then there's the internal Buddha, the one that the Buddha pointed to, seeing the Dhamma is seeing the Buddha. And seeing the Dhamma can happen when your mind is with the word Buddha, when it's awake. And what do we notice when the mind is awake, present in the moment, whatever the place, the time, the activity? We start to notice the way things are, don't we? We start to notice maybe, first of all, just karma at work, that our mental actions, our speech, our physical actions have consequences, have results. And this is a central principle to the way the Buddha taught, is that we have to start observing from ourselves what's going on in our life. Be more aware, more observant, have the mind of Buddha, the awakened mind. And that's where you learn, and you start to learn, your thoughts matter, because the way you're thinking, whether it's skillful or unskillful, will affect your health of your mind, your well-being, your peace of mind, or you may be getting caught into stress and unhappiness. That's all originating as mental karma in your mind, and things matter. Your thoughts, your views on things, your attitudes matter, because they already bring in a certain experience to you of pleasure or pain, happiness, unhappiness. And similarly, we become more aware as we start practicing that our speech matters. What we say to other people, what we do physically matters. Our actions matter because of karma. Simple truth that there are causes that lead to results. Good causes, good results. Bad causes, bad results. The Buddha encouraged us to begin our practice at this level, just understanding cause and effect in our own behavior, body, speech, and mind. And then develop the path of awakening and become more observant of ourselves and see, when we get caught into actions or speech that is harmful to ourselves or others, we suffer for that. And that brings us to why we might use the 5 precepts as guidelines, because this is the Buddha encouraging us to be mindful, the mind of Buddha, the awakened mind, of what we do say, to avoid falling into actions that harm others, physically harming creatures. Most usually it will be maybe just insects or small creatures around us, but also includes human beings and bigger animals and human beings as well. You know, to be aware that our actions have consequences. What we say, what we do can be a joy, can be of benefit to others, can help support others, can be an expression of compassion, wisdom. Or we, through our lack of awareness, we can harm others or ourselves through our speech and actions. This is where the Buddha said to waken up to the truth. And maybe the first place you'll be doing that is to waken up to the way things are by seeing what you say, what you do matters. The mind on the inside is much harder to see. It's faster, it's quicker to change, it's quite hard to keep up with it. But on the outside, our external behavior, we can perhaps become more aware more quickly. So for me, as learning to practice meditation and mindfulness, when I first began, the first thing I noticed was how I was relating to other people and the world around me, what I was saying, what I was doing, and realizing that some of the things I did and said could be better. They were having, I was causing myself and others stress, suffering. Not being so sensitive to other people, you can easily say or do things that hurt them, sometimes knowingly, sometimes inadvertently. But that maybe for many people is the first area where we start waking up to the truth, is we see, karma is at work in our lives. What we say, what we do matters. How we treat the people around us, the environment around us matters. It has consequences. And so as you're waking up, you're seeing the consequences of actions, or your mind can change from that. You learn little by little maybe, but still you learn that it's better to avoid harming others through our speech, our actions. And that feeds back to awareness of, well, what's underlying this habit of harming others, saying things that are hurtful, doing things that are selfish or aggressive. Well, it's the mind, the untrained mind, the undeveloped mind, or the mind without Buddha, the mind without awareness, easily gets caught into its moods. And as you practice more awareness, more mindfulness, what do you notice? Well, you notice when there is no mindfulness and we are caught into our moods, suffering emerges. Even just an angry thought is suffering. Even if you never act on it, never speak it out, never act on it, we're suffering every time we grasp and identify with that thought of anger, thought of greed, jealousy, stubbornness, thoughts of delusion, confusion, worry, fear. All these mental qualities that we call mental kilesa, defilements, the things that defile this mind, darken the mind, are causes for suffering. And every time we go with them, we suffer, whether it's just for a few moments or for many moments or many hours or many days, many lifetimes, repeatedly. The mind that's following these negative qualities suffers. And this is where you get your motivation to keep practicing awareness, mindfulness, the mind of Buddha, is because you realize that's the remedy. If I'm suffering, it's because I'm attaching to a certain way of thinking, certain way of relating to the world that is bringing me suffering, and maybe it's causing suffering to others as well. And that may be ongoing, and it may be getting deeper and worse sometimes over periods of time. What can I do about it? Bring up the mind of Buddha. That might even mean reciting Buddha at a time when you realize you're getting caught into some form of negativity, worry, fear, anger, greed. Actually bringing up Buddha literally at that moment to steady yourself, calm yourself down, to pause, press the pause button from the endless loop of thinking in those negative ways. Buddha is that powerful. Literally bringing up the word Buddha in your mind as you're having a thought, a negative thought, complaining about something or some person in your life. You're sitting there just thinking and thinking, and suddenly you realize what you're doing, and you introduce Buddha, and you move your mind away from that train of negative thought to the present moment. You understand that train of thought has come up, so you don't need to blame yourself for that. In a sense, you can just know it by establishing Buddha. You know it, but you know it for what it is, that it's suffering. If I keep thinking in this way, I keep clinging on, I'm suffering. You bring your mind back to the present moment, you rebalance your mind. Another benefit of practicing developing the mind of Buddha, the awareness, is not only does it help to cut through the mental suffering, the stresses of our mind, but it also helps us to understand it better, what the nature of suffering is. That it's when we cling on with delusion, with lack of understanding, and identify with each feeling, each emotion, each thought as me, as a self. The quality of Buddha is the mind of mindfulness. And the Buddha pointed out that mindfulness, when it's pure, when it's practiced well, for even if only brief periods, has a very impersonal quality. It's just knowing the way things are, but without judging or reacting or giving importance or value to those things that the mind is aware of. Just knowing in a very pure, ordinary way, just knowing this is the way things are. So if you are caught into suffering, you know, oh, I'm suffering, it's like this, but not creating further suffering out of that suffering. Just knowing with the mind of Buddha, it's like this. Anger is like this. Look at it. It's unpleasant. It's stressful. Rather than getting caught up into the story, the soap opera of our own emotion of suffering or happiness, gladness, which also tends to lead to desire, the attachment, the desire and attachment to cling on to that happiness and the pleasant things that are providing it and producing it. Or the suffering of anger, worry, fear, not clinging on to that, but just knowing it. You know, the mind of Buddha just knows it. And once we know these mental states as mental states, that sense of separation takes place. The mind can let go of the sense of self that normally forms. So the story is interrupted. We're no longer proliferating and creating a story about that incident, that problem, that thing we want that we haven't got, and so on. Now the mind is just the mind of Buddha, just knowing. And if you become more familiar with that through your practice, you become familiar with the mind that is calm, peaceful, and understanding or seeing the way things are rather than getting deluded by them. So the mind of Buddha is impersonal. It doesn't judge, it just knows. So you may think, oh, I'm starting this Buddhist practice with, I've got so many mental defilements and so many problems and I'm no good and I don't have much merit or much parami. You may think that, but at the moment you establish the word Buddha, those thoughts fade, don't they? Now you're just reciting Buddha, you're knowing, oh, it's like this. You don't have to hold on to those thoughts or that view about yourself anymore. At that moment when Buddha is there, you can let it all go. And it's peaceful. Your mind becomes peaceful in the present moment. It doesn't mean to say you become numb or blank to the world. That is not the mind of Buddha. The mind of Buddha is knowing things as they are. So if you are caught into an unskillful state of mind, or you've said or done something that you regret, that's caused you suffering, you know that. But at the moment Buddha arises and the moment you establish mindful awareness, you know now at this moment, you're not acting or speaking or thinking in that way. It's arisen, it's passed away. It was a mental state that arose, passed away, and now it's gone. And there's that clarity. If mindfulness is strong enough, if the Buddha is clear, strong, and there persistently for a period of time, you can't help but see the impermanent nature of these different mental states that cause you stress and lead to all kinds of suffering. And this is probably the hard work of the practitioner who is following the Buddha's path. It's that putting effort into establishing mindfulness over and over again through our day, through our life, learning to cut through the dreams, the soap operas, the stories that we constantly build up in our mind and often act out also through speech and action and create more stress through that attachment. It's that effort to cut through it. As I was saying just now, it's not like you become numb to the world and don't know anything or just passive, which is a comment, many non-Buddhists or people who've never practiced, even Buddhists who've never practiced much mindfulness meditation, they often have, and they say, well, it looks to me like it just makes everyone unable to think, unable to act, can't do anything. But that's not correct. The mind of Buddha is the opposite. It's creative, it's aware, and it can see what is what. So it can see a thought that is conducive to happiness, helpful, maybe an expression of compassion and kindness or wisdom. And the mind of Buddha knows it doesn't need to drop that, or throw that away, or maybe a train of thought or a contemplation that is useful for you. It knows that. On the other hand, it also knows those thoughts and mental states that are suffering and leading to more suffering. So those the mind will want to drop, because you can see, oh, it's suffering. So it's, the mind of Buddha is there to allow our wisdom faculty, our intelligence, to operate at its best, unimpeded by bias and attachment, seeing clearly the way things are, what needs to be dropped, what needs to be cultivated. That's the way we grow and mature in our practice, or that's the way we waken up, waken to the truth. And you can compare it a little bit like, say, you know, in the morning or whenever you've had a sleep and you're waking up, you know, if you practice meditation regularly or at least a bit, you'll be familiar with that quality of gaining awareness out of the dream state, and the dream state has come out of the state of deep sleep. So as you're waking up, you start to feel your body, feel the air outside, and become aware of your thoughts. And as we know, in the dream state, often the thoughts are kind of don't make much sense, or they're jumbled up, or they're a little bit unusual. And then you gradually gain your true normal awareness. So it's that waking up. And really, the more you practice mindfulness, that's going on all the time, but on different levels. So sometimes literally at very coarse levels, they're coming out of sleep and waking up to the consciousness that is awake, fully awake. Or like somebody who's had some medication and they've been drowsy and ill or in pain, and then they've taken the medication and now the medication is wearing off, so they're coming out of that. Or it could be just on a more subtle level, you're coming out of a train of thought that grabbed your attention for a while, held your attention, and you're stuck there thinking about some issue in your life, your world, but coming out of that and waking up again to, oh, I was just thinking that. It doesn't mean to say those thoughts were good or bad, but now you're able to see them as thoughts, thoughts as thoughts, feelings as feelings. The more you practice, the more you become familiar with this quality of waking up to the truth rather than getting caught into the next story or the next reaction to what you're experiencing. And you can see that, say, when you practice meditation, you'll find you become more able to sustain attention, sustain awareness as you're sitting or walking meditation. And you have different experiences, some pleasant, some unpleasant, but your mind doesn't wobble or waver so much the more you practice mindfulness, the more you retain Buddha. You know what's happening, but you let go. And you can make good choices then. It doesn't mean to say you can't act or respond to things, but you just know, and then you can decide what you do with the experience you're having or what you need to do next. And so often, and particularly in meditation, formal meditation, you don't need to do anything next other than just let go, because you're in the ideal situation for that. And that's something we need to practice at least sometimes in our day. We always say, oh, I can't meditate because I can't watch my breath or recite Buddha while I'm typing or having a meeting with someone. Yeah, of course, there are those times when you can't do that. But there are times or we can make time where we can set aside the other tasks and issues and activities, if only for short periods. And at those times, we can let go of everything and really get familiar with the mind of Buddha, and just reciting Buddha or following the breath, dropping everything. And at first, that brings up fear. Like talking to many meditators, they say, when I practice formal meditation, I quite often get to the point where I'm quite mindful of Buddha or the breath. And then a fear coming up because I'm letting go of everything. The normal feelings in my body, the normal thoughts, my memories, the past, the future. It's like there's nothing left. And at first, that's a challenge to who we feel we are and what we think is good and what we want in life. It's like, oh, if I've got nothing, then I'm nobody and life is not good anymore. It will bring up fears and worries. So you have to trust in the Buddha. And that's why Buddha is such a good meditation object, because it comes from the Buddha. It's referring to the Buddha. And you trust in Buddha as a mechanism for allowing you to let go of suffering. And so if you're confronted with yet another form of suffering, the fear of letting go itself, oh, this is worrisome, this is difficult, I'm unfamiliar with this. Well, trust in the word Buddha, just see what happens. Have the courage, the faith to just push on a bit more. And you might experience a very peaceful state where you're just knowing, but you're letting go. And if you experience that a few times, you gain a lot of courage and even happiness in your life, because all things can be let go of. You understand the mechanism of letting go using the mind of Buddha. And you might find you can start to apply this in other areas of your life, new things. That when you have new challenges, new problems, and you're not sure what to do, maybe it's bringing up anxiety for you, some aspect of your life. You're worried about work or a relationship or your health. What do I do? Go to Buddha first. Practice letting go. Practice going to the mind of Buddha so you understand and see the mind better. What is the mind that knows? And then what is the mind that is caught into the defilements, the proliferation? And you start to develop that skill of knowing what you have to let go of, how to let go. And doing it better, you become more skilled at it. And it can maybe let go of things that you didn't know you could let go of. Or let go of things that seemed so much a part of you, you didn't realize they were causing you suffering. Suddenly you realize, you can let go, and it's peaceful. This is what my teacher Ajahn Chah called dying before you die. Even the word death brings out anxiety and fear for many people. But actually the mind of Buddha is dying from your attachments, from your clinging, from your mental defilements, letting them go. And what comes up in the place quite naturally is peace. It's not letting go and then you've got nothing and you're lost. It's letting go and you're really fully there, fully present in the moment, but you're not attaching. And this is the mind that is at its best, at its peak. It has mindfulness, but wisdom is functioning, and you can see what is wholesome, what is not, and you can see the true nature of this body and mind. You can see these things that I'm involved with here. This mind is involved with the physical body, feelings, memories, thoughts. These things are impermanent. What's impermanent can be let go of. What arises must cease. And if you can see the arising and ceasing of your experience, that's true wisdom. That's liberating wisdom. And you do it a little bit, a few times, and you hopefully get better at it. And then you can see, that way of suffering I used to have, now I don't need to suffer. I can just let it go, let it be. I don't need to cling on to everything. I don't need to try and control the world from here, from the center of my mind, trying to make my body be exactly how I want it, in a sense, how I want it to be strong, healthy, look good. But now I know I have to accept, I must let go of it because I can't control it. Or this world around me, my family, my friends, my work colleagues, and the bigger world, the world of pandemics and economics, ups and downs, all of this has to be let go of to be peaceful. But letting go doesn't mean inactive, passive, not involved with anything. It's a change in your attitude based on yourself, based on knowing yourself and knowing the world from your own perspective, but seeing it in a true way. The mind of Buddha sees things as they are. They're impermanent. They arise, they cease. Ultimately, I can't control them or own them. So the practice of awakening to the truth brings you to that point where you realize the peaceful way is actually the way of letting go of attachment, delusion, wrong views, It doesn't mean to say there's nothing left. What's left is awareness. You might say mindfulness and wisdom, but it's peaceful. So today I've talked a little bit about the Buddha from the point of the internal Buddha, bringing your mind to awaken to the truth, training it, developing this path of sila, samadhi, panya, bringing you to see and know the internal Buddha. By seeing the Dhamma, knowing the Dhamma, you can see the Buddha. And I think you might find if as you keep practicing this, you'll get more and more from the Buddhist teachings by putting effort into this. Not always easy. We all have our own challenges, our own attachments, but I would encourage you to keep putting effort into this practice, and you will find it brings you more peace, more happiness. So for the moment, I'll end the talk here, and there may be time for Q&A after.
Handamayang Dhamma Kataya Sadhu Karang Dada Mase Sadhu 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 Anubodhami. Thank you, Tan Ajahn, for sharing the Dhamma with us on this inspiring and timely topic about the Buddha's path to awakening. Using Buddha as an anchor to help us develop awakened awareness. It is very reassuring that we can practice this practically anywhere to establish mindfulness. Thank you, Tan Ajahn, for this guidance, giving us something that we can start doing immediately and keep on doing it. Brothers and sisters, we now have 15 minutes for Q&A with Tan Ajahn. To submit your questions, kindly type them into your Facebook chat under this event or Zoom chat as well. I will then read out your questions to Tan Ajahn. As there is limited time, I would like to apologize upfront if we are unable to get through all of your questions, but we will try to go through all of them. Tan Ajahn, we already have a few questions coming up, so let me go through them in order of their appearance. How can we practice Buddha in managing our anxiety during this pandemic?
Well, if you've already practiced with Buddha somewhat, that will help, because it will be a meditation word that you have a sense of trust and familiarity with. So then when you're experiencing anxiety, literally you could, if you've got time, you're not too busy or distracted with other things, take a few minutes here and there through your day just to stop, calm yourself, especially when you're feeling anxiety, and start reciting Buddha. And just do it in a gentle but continuous way, and you'll be pulling your mind away from its obsession and its normal being caught up with those anxious thoughts and feelings that may be arising. You're bringing your mind to Buddha. And if you've practiced with it before, you might have that sense, this is something I can do, and it will help loosen that attachment, the identification with the feeling. You may have physical feelings manifesting, and also those agitated thoughts. If you're new to Buddha as a meditation object, well, think it through. What does it stand for? As I've been talking a bit about earlier in the talk today, reflect on the Buddha, and most people find they get some strength of mind from that. The mind brightens, they feel better when they recollect the Buddha. So you might just think of the Buddha as anxiety comes up, and that just is enough just to help steady your mind in the middle of your experience of anxiety. And if you practice more, you do it regularly, every day you set aside times to practice like this, then you'll be ready for if you are getting caught up into anxiety about health, the pandemic, what's going to happen to the world, all those kind of doubts and worries that may come up. You've got something ready, particularly if you're really overwhelmed by anxiety. You say, what do I do? When you're anxious, you tend to sort of feel lost, helpless. You can recite Buddha. You can go back to the Buddha, recite it to steady your mind, if only for 1 minute. Or if you've got more time and more energy available, well, for many minutes, do a real meditation and just set aside all those mental states that come up but are not that real. They're just layers and layers of thinking and attaching to the different worried thoughts. Yes. Learn to set them aside by practicing Buddha regularly.
Thank you, Tan Ajahn. The next question we have. Tan Ajahn, thanks for your teachings. I noted that I shouldn't be caught into the negative thoughts and should try my very best to bring the mind to the present moment. By doing that, what I should do next in addressing my problem at present, and how do I know my actions that come thereafter are always the best or wholesome to address my existing problem? Or are you saying that when I'm able to live at the present moment, my next action is always the right action?
Well, we can't guarantee that it always be the right action, but you're putting your mind in the best position to make wise decisions, good choices, and to look at its own experience from a place of calm, clarity. So the mind of Buddha is preparing you for choices you may have to make, decisions, actions you may have to perform. But at the same time, you have to use wisdom and you accept, well, life is a learning experience. The practice of meditation is a learning experience. Going through life is a learning experience. So sometimes we still make mistakes because we don't know everything. We haven't experienced everything. So sometimes we in error, there's something we don't know, we make a mistake and cause ourselves trouble or problems. So you have to accept that. You don't be so timid that you just don't dare to do anything. But use the mind of awareness, mindfulness, and wisdom to prepare yourself for the things you have to do in life. So I would say the best thing to help you in your daily life is practice meditation first thing in the morning when you get up, before you do anything else. Spend some time just developing pure mindfulness on an object such as Buddha, teaching yourself to let go of the worries, the plans, the problems, let it all go, at least for a period of time. Then when you have to face the world, you have the right qualities to start your day and to go through your day, and you'll find it much easier to come back to the mind of Buddha at times when you're getting stressed or worked up. So it's an ongoing practice, and you have to accept you may make mistakes sometimes. That's life, but we all learn from mistakes. We can learn from mistakes. And the mind of Buddha is giving you ability to learn properly and see where you're causing suffering, because you can't help but notice it. And so you become wiser through experience. Your mind matures, and gradually, hopefully, you make less mistakes and your mind is more able to do the right thing.
Thank you. Tan Ajahn, next we have a 3-part question. By practicing mindfulness, can I cleanse my previous karma? What is the relation between developing mindfulness and doing good deeds? Do I need to intentionally do more good things to help my mindfulness practice? Or by practicing mindfulness, my mind will generally push me towards doing more good deeds?
So the first part of the question, cleansing bad karma. Well, yes, it can, but maybe not in the way you're thinking. I don't know quite how you're thinking because we can't speak here, but you're definitely changing your karma for the better the more you practice mindfulness, because it opens up your intelligence, your wisdom to function at its best. So you make good choices and you can develop good qualities the more you practice mindfulness. You can't change the past, but at least the effects of the past as they come up, the memories and the habits of body, speech, and mind, as they're coming up, the more mindful you are, the more you can adjust and change. And myself and every other practitioner I've met has done that. We, as human beings, that's what defines us as human beings, is that we can learn, we can improve, we can change for the better if we make the effort. And the practice of mindfulness is centering ourselves in that very task, making us aware of what we need to improve, what we need to change, making us aware that the past is the past, so we have to accept that. We can't go back in time and fix things, but the future comes from the present. And if we develop mindfulness in the present, then we're setting the causes for good things to arise in the future. And we can change our habits. You know, you can previously be somebody who was always drinking and getting drunk and having problems, and you can decide to give up. As you become mindful, you decide to change that habit. Or somebody who tells lies or exaggerates all the time to get what they want, or to get at other people, whatever, they can become aware and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I can see the value of not lying. You know, we can change our behavior, and mindfulness is one of the qualities, not the only quality, but it's one of the central qualities for making those changes. And that's how you change your karma, by recognizing the good and the bad, and then adjusting, doing more of the good, letting go of the bad. But you can only do that in the present moment. You can't do it in the past because that's gone, and you can't do it in the future because you haven't reached that yet. You have to do it in the present moment. The second part of the question, can you remind me what it was?
What is the relation between developing mindfulness and doing good deeds?
Well, I think most people find that the more mindfulness they practice, that in itself is a good deed. It's a good thing, bringing clarity and understanding to the mind. Then you can see the value of doing good. So you want to do it more and more. You want to develop wholesome, skillful states of mind, act in skillful ways more because you're mindful, because you see the value of it. You know, when we're new to the practice, or you might say immature, inexperienced in the practice, well, inexperience means often we don't yet see what is truly valuable for us. And the practice of mindfulness will gradually bring us that clarity. So you realize, doing good is good for me, good for others, whether it's on the level of practice of generosity and compassion. It's better for me, better for others when I practice develop those qualities, rather than being selfish or aggressive or unkind, cruel. When you keep precepts, if you're mindful, you need mindfulness to keep precepts, and then you realize why you're keeping precepts. Because you're mindful, you see the benefits straight away, so then you want to do it more. When you practice meditation, the more you put effort into developing mindfulness, usually the better you feel mentally, you're more calm, you're more clear, and that inspires you to want to do it more. Especially anyone who's experienced states of calm in meditation, they usually see the value of it. They don't doubt it anymore. They know this is something good. So mindfulness generates a lot of wisdom and understanding together. And as that understanding grows, then the desire to practice more good, to develop the path, will grow as well. And what was the last question?
It sounds like you had already answered it, but the last question was, do I need to intentionally do more good things to help with my mindfulness practice? Or by practicing mindfulness, my mind will generally push me towards doing more good deeds?
Yeah, they work together. But in the beginning, we do have to make that intention. We have to be clear. We have to make a deliberate effort, because we're inexperienced in the practice. You know, our mind is not used to being mindful, to doing good intentionally. We may not be used to that. So, of course, in the beginning, we do things in a more deliberate way. So we sit meditation for a period of time as a regular practice. We may undertake precepts as a deliberate practice. We may go on a meditation retreat. We may practice dana in a very deliberate way. So I'm going to the temple to make an offering, or I'm going to do this charity work, or I'm going to volunteer to do something to help others. And you may, in the beginning, do it in a very deliberate way to teach yourself to bring out energy and effort, to let go of your distraction, your selfishness, your laziness, say. But over time, that may change as you become more familiar, more happy, hopefully, from the practice, and more familiar with it. It becomes more natural to you. Your mind changes, it develops in a good way, it improves. So then it becomes more natural to be mindful, more natural to be generous in situations, more natural to be compassionate, sensitive to others, more natural for you to reflect on the Dhamma in situations rather than just always react with your first emotion. Say, there's a certain organic or natural growth of your practice fed by mindfulness, but it's like fertilizer that nourishes other good things to the point where it's just naturally growing. Of course, people who practice like these teachers, Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mahabua, they get to the point where their mindfulness, they say, is just automatic. It's just normal for them to be mindful, and any moment of or lack of mindfulness is quickly identified and noted and seen as something to be fixed, remedied quickly. In the beginning, it's the opposite. We have many moments when we're not mindful, and mindfulness is just a few blobs or drops here and there, but then gradually that dynamic's changing, isn't it? And we're becoming little by little more mindful, more aware, wiser, more experienced. And the moments when we're completely lost, confused, suffering, unmindful, hopefully become less and less and less.
Thank you. Next question. When I was trying to be mindful, a scene of a person who had accused me previously pops up. My emotions are aroused and I can't be mindful. I was emotionally drained. The scene kept on flashing in my mind. Appreciate advice of Tan Ajahn how I can manage it.
Well, I think that's a very common experience for many of us. The fact that you're able to recollect it, recount it now in a question means you have been mindful of it to an extent. I think what you're thinking though is, if I'm truly mindful, it shouldn't happen. But you have to remember, we are carrying along our past karma. And the practice of mindfulness doesn't mean to say nothing comes up in your mind, nothing happens. What it means is, you're training your mind to relate to your own internal world correctly, with wisdom, with the right qualities. So we have to accept we've had traumatic experiences, we've done things that were bad, other people have done bad things to us, and we remember them, and maybe that triggers anger, hatred towards them, what they've said, what they've done. So the first thing is to accept that's happened. What's happened has happened, karma has happened, and it's arising, and it may continue to arise from time to time in your life. So then how do we deal with it? Bring up the mindfulness as best you can, as quickly as you can, as best you can, so that you can deal with these things correctly. So you'll notice if you're very mindful, maybe quite traumatic things or unpleasant things can happen, but you don't get caught up into them so much when you're mindful. You don't hold on to the memory or those thoughts so much. The feeling comes up, but it doesn't trigger a lot of suffering or certain behavior based on those feelings. You just note it, you're aware of it, you can be with it, and then it will pass, as they all do. All feelings, all thoughts, all memories, they pass. When you're mindful, you can do that. So then it's as if those things don't have so much importance in your mind. They don't take over your mind so much. You can let them go, let them be. But then there's those other times when, like you say, mindfulness is weak. You have a memory of what someone said and straight away the emotion comes up, sometimes almost like an explosion of rage or feelings of injustice. If you're very unmindful, it may lead on to wanting to physically or verbally get them back, and you may actually lead to unskillful action of body and speech. So you might say your first practice of mindfulness in those situations is just to be clear with yourself. Okay, I've got the memory, the feelings come up, the emotion is there, but I'm not going to act on it. I'm not going to do anything to hurt anyone, because these feelings, these thoughts and memories are mine. So that might be your first practice of mindfulness, just to restrain your body and speech in sila. This is, we say, having sila, having a sense of moral, what is right and wrong, good and bad, and not breaking your sila. Once you're learning to practice in that way, then you can internalize the practice. So you're aware of the emotion, you know where it's coming from, it's come up, but you just allow it to sit there and then maintain mindfulness. If you can, you may bring up a more skillful thought to quickly change the direction of what's going on in your mind. So if you have a thought of anger and a feeling of anger, you may then think of something that calms you, brings up more compassion, forgiveness, acceptance. Sometimes, though, even that doesn't work, so you may just have to be very patient. So this is why the Buddha said, practice patience with mindfulness, so that you're managing that emotional state. If it's a very traumatic or very strong emotion, well, you just manage it with patience and it will gradually fade, and you know you're not feeding it or making it worse. Other times wisdom is very sharp, so mindfulness allows wisdom to function. So you're mindful that you're getting angry, you have a memory and you're angry, but then you have some wisdom come in to say, why bother? Why keep holding on to these angry thoughts? I'm suffering. Your wisdom is always that reflection, that insight that sees suffering and its cause and then finds the way to let go. So you might say, well, this is just a thought. It's happened in the past. I don't need to keep reliving it, holding on to it. I can now let go. It's impermanent. It's not self. These thoughts are not me. They're just the thoughts, the mental states triggered by that memory, but they're just mental states, thoughts that have come up. I can now let them go, and they're not really me. I don't have to hold on to them, become angry, become that way. There's so many different reflections you could bring in, but with mindfulness, wisdom can function. So you're working on these different levels, on the level of sila, on the level of samadhi, just calming the mind, and then wisdom, panya, to actually change what's going on, let it go, and with the aim of finally letting it go. And you might find that sometimes you get little victories where something, some person, some memory has triggered anger over and over again, but finally you just let it go and it doesn't bother you anymore because you know what it is and you don't want to suffer in that way, and you have enough mindfulness, enough understanding, you just let it go. That's the fruits of your own efforts, so you can be happy that the Dhamma has arisen in your heart. You know, this is suffering, I'm not going to suffer like this anymore, and you let it go.
Earlier on, Tan Ajahn mentioned about walking meditation and how we can use Buddha as a way of re-anchoring ourselves. The question is, for walking meditation, which object should we use?
Well, in meditation, we always have a few different objects we could use. When you're using Buddha, generally we're taught to recite Buddha in conjunction with the feet touching the ground. So right foot down, you might just recite Buddha, left foot down, Buddha. Or if you're walking very slowly, right foot Bud, left foot Do, right foot Bud, left foot Do. You can experiment. There is a certain flexibility here. Some people walk faster, some slower, some recite Buddha with each foot, or just Bud with one foot, Do with another. But the aim is to recite Buddha continuously, to develop that continual awareness by using Buddha to center the mind's awareness to one point in the mind and use it in conjunction with the walking posture. But you can experiment to see what works for you. I've got friends, monks, who can walk for hours and hours and hours reciting Buddha with the feet moving, just being aware of their feet moving, reciting the Buddha to the point where the mind and body becomes so calm, so light and happy that they just let go of everything. That you might say that's when your practice goes well, that's what you're aiming for, where your mind is content just to stay with Buddha, with the walking back and forth. Even the sense of time fades. That might be a good thing to aim for. But to get to that point, you have to really let go. You really put all your trust in Buddha and you consciously let go of everything else.
Tan Ajahn, the next question is from a male 8 preceptor. The question goes, during 8 precept days, can we contact, I guess in this case, seek treatment from a male medical physician? The male preceptor is unwell.
Sure, yeah, that's all right. In a monastery, we have 8 preceptors living there, and sometimes they get sick, so they have no choice. They might need to receive medical treatment. So on the 8 precepts, or just me as a monk, 227 precepts, sometimes I have to seek medical treatment from a doctor. So you see what's appropriate at the time. So looking after the body is part of our job as in the practice. You know, we have to look after the body. The Buddha allowed us to seek medical attention. Of course, it can become a problem. We can become very obsessed with it or worried about it, of course. So that's an area to look at in your contemplation as well. But it's not going against the precepts to seek medical help.
Thank you, Tan Ajahn. Looks like we have reached the final question, and it goes like this. The story of Ajahn Man shared about Ajahn Man giving up his resolve to become a Buddha is interesting and alarming to me. I come from a more Mahayana background, but I'm also attracted to the Theravada teaching to emphasize enough in practicing meditation and developing mindfulness and living at the present moment. Mahayana teaching emphasizes a lot on becoming a Buddha. How do I ensure that I will become a Buddha but not become an Arahant? What are the factors of becoming a Buddha versus an Arahant?
Well, if you really want to become a Buddha, you have to make that resolve so hard, so firm, so clear in your mind, life after life after life. It will be many lives before you become a Buddha, that you don't give it up. You don't get distracted. You don't stray. Ajahn, I believe, I may be wrong because I'm not Ajahn Mun, but I believe one of his reasoning was that the world needs arahants. And why is a Buddha here? A Buddha is here to teach the rest of the world the path to liberation, to Nibbana. So the Buddha also needs disciples. So it's not wrong for people to just aim for Nibbana, you know, to become an arahant. In that sense, you know, the Buddha needs arahants. The world needs arahants, and I believe Ajahn Mun thought in that way. He said the world needs arahants at this time. To become a Buddha takes so long. It takes eons and eons and eons of practice. Of course, it's a great aspiration, a great result, but very few stick with it. Most bodhisattvas give up their aspiration at some point and become an arahant. Having said all this, you're probably familiar with Ajahn Chah's response to these kind of questions, and he'd say, don't become anything. Don't become an arahant, don't become a Buddha, because becoming is a cause of suffering. And you know, if you're aspiring to be a Buddha and you haven't yet attained that, you may suffer because of your aspiration. You know, you may feel disappointed or discouraged. Or if you aspire to be an arahant, you may be discouraged if you haven't reached it, or you may one day think you've achieved it already in a deluded way. You may actually delude yourself, I'm now an enlightened Buddha, or I'm an enlightened arahant. And believe it or not, when you live in a monastery, sometimes people come to the monastery saying this. It's quite surprising that someone can actually think they're a Buddha or an arahant when they're clearly not. So be a little bit careful about, you know, attaching to these terms. I would look more at just developing the good causes in your practice, developing compassion, kindness, compassion, developing morality, sense of practicing in an ethical way, develop mindfulness, develop wisdom. And if you become an arahant or a Buddha, in the end, you know, they're both good. But I would focus more on developing the good causes in your practice. Because if we focus too much on the title, the label, I want to be this, I want to be that, that can become an attachment and an obstacle in your practice.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Tan Ajahn, for taking our questions and clarifying our understanding and doubts. We would like to ask Tan Ajahn to lead us in the dedication of merits. We are taking this opportunity to extend our dedication of merits to the COVID victims in Malaysia, India, Nepal, and around the world, wishing all a safe and speedy recovery. Tan Ajahn.
So I too would just like to dedicate today's talk and our Dhamma practice today to all the victims of COVID. It's a difficult time for the world as a whole, humanity as a whole, because a pandemic implies, you know, widespread illness and unfortunately a lot of death as well, and we're not through it yet. So I think the Buddhist teachings have something to offer us all, but at this time we'll share the goodness of our practice today. At this time, with all the people suffering in the world, we wish them freedom from illness, freedom from fear, freedom from pain and worry. May they all attain good health. May they all attain enlightenment. And I'll chant a blessing now and bless you all as well, all of you watching. May you all also be free from illness, free from pain and suffering. May you all find true peace and happiness. Yathavarivaha pura paripuranti sakarang Ewa ito tinang betanang upakapati Ichitam batitang dumhang kipamewa samichato sabe puranto sankapa Chanto panara so yata manicho tira so yata sapitio vivachanto Sabaro go vinasato mate bhavatwantarayo sukhitikayo kopawa Abhivatana silisanicham mutapachayino chataro dhamma vatanti ayuvanno sukhang balang bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata Sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena satha soti bhavantu te.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Brothers and sisters, we have reached the end of this Dharma talk. Before Tan Ajahn takes leave, let us perform the closing homage. Please bow together following the sound of the bell. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Once again, thank you, Tan Ajahn. Brothers and sisters, as Tan Ajahn takes leave, I ask that you please remain on the call as we would like to request your feedback and make a few announcements. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, if you wish to make a dana offering to Tan Ajahn and the Sangha, you can do so by doing a bank transfer to the account details as shown. This will be care of Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia, and we would like to thank you in advance for your donation. Could we please project the slides as well? Thank you. So the details are on the screen as well as in the chat message. You can copy and paste the account number. This will be care of Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia. Please remember to make the reference as awakening so that we will be able to identify that this dana is from this session. We will leave this on for a few seconds. Once again, thank you in advance for your donation. Next up, if you had enjoyed this afternoon's session with Tan Ajahn, please give us your feedback on how the talk went. If you didn't enjoy the talk, we will need your feedback even more, as we would like you to leave us your thoughts on how we can improve on our future sessions. You'll find the feedback link in your Facebook chat window or your Zoom chat window. Your feedback is a gift and we really appreciate it. Brother Bunsen, could you reverse the slide, please? Thank you. So this is a Google's form. If you click on the link in the chat, you can copy paste it into your browser. That will take you straight to the feedback form. We really appreciate your feedback so we know how we can do better next round. Next up, moving on, brothers and sisters, if you would like to attend more online Dharma talks, we warmly invite you to the following talks organized by YBAM. These talks are all broadcast live via YBAM's Facebook page, so you can join in from the comfort and safety of home. Firstly, join us on a 4-part series titled The Dharma Wheel of the Four Noble Truths and the 3 Scopes of the Stages of the Path to Awakening by Reteng Rinpoche. This started on Wednesday, 12th May, and will continue into the next 3 Fridays, starting 21st May. The talks start at 8 p.m. and is estimated to run for 1 hour 15 minutes. The talks in this series will be delivered in Mandarin. Next, we have the talk by Bhante Mahinda on remembering the Buddha. This talk will be on this Wednesday, 19th May, from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. and it will be delivered in English. Before the Buddha attained to enlightenment, the Bodhisattva went through many lifetimes seeking his liberation, perfecting his paramis. Join Bhante Dhammapala as he discusses the Bodhisattva ideal from the Theravada perspective. This is a Mandarin talk and will be on this Saturday on the 22nd May. Please note, however, this session will be held in the morning at 9 a.m. and we will start the transmission of the 5 or 8 precepts first, then followed by the talk estimated to start at 9:30 a.m. Lastly, good news for anybody looking to attend a retreat. Venerable Hui Min will be leading a 1-day online retreat. In this retreat, participants will practice Satipatthana meditation, chanting, and uphold the 8 precepts. This full-day retreat is delivered in Mandarin and will be held on Saturday, 29th May, and will be from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. If you're interested, please register using the link provided. You can also use your phone to scan the QR code to directly access the registration link. With that, we've come to the end of this afternoon's session. We'll thank all of you for participation and for staying with us until the end of these announcements. If you have any inquiries, please visit the YBAM Facebook page for details. Once again, thank you. Stay healthy and safe. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.